Hi, everybody. It's Tammy here with Weekend Homesteaders, and welcome to another episode of Chickens and Chatter. We're very excited today to have Joy Copfer, and our discussion topic today is Big Dog, Little Chicks. Hi, Joy, and welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and I'm excited to have you here.
Hi, Tammy. Thanks so much for having me. I'm very excited to share my story and our journey with our chicks for the first year and our big dog, Zeke, who's about 80 pounds. So, what got us interested? What got us started? We are located in Southwest Ohio, close to Cincinnati. We are on a little less than 2 acres. And kind of the reason we wanted to get started is my oldest daughter, Grace, when she was in high school, she wanted to get chicks as a project for high school, but it just didn't work out. The zoning at that point in time didn't allow it. So, roll to through COVID and the beginning of January of 23, my husband went to the store to pick up some eggs, and he was limited. And that was probably the beginning. He came home and he said, "Let's look into getting some chicks." I'm like, "Really? You really want to do this?" And he was like, "Yes, let's look into it." So January of 23 is kind of what actually really put the fire um, really what started the fire for us. I had already been interested a little bit because my oldest daughter, Grace, was kind of interested. Like I said, back in 2017 when she was in high school. So then I got very interested after that point in time. And I was trying to figure out, like, what do we really want to do? It's a little windy outside here. I'm going to take my cup and put it on my notes here. So it ended up being, well, where are we going to put them? Which breeds are we going to get? How many do we want to get? What's the care for them? And I have really been a horse girl most of my life. I started riding back in 2000, and so I am very interested in having a farm. And everybody who knows me knows that. Chickens was really the last thing on my mind I ever wanted to get. I'm not fond of things that have feathers. My kids scared me when we went to the zoo. We went in the birdhouse one time. Don't like feathers. I got attacked by a duck when I was working at a restaurant on the river. So things with feathers was the last thing on my agenda. But chickens are a gateway to homesteading. And so I thought, okay, my husband really wants to do this. I'm all in. Let's do it. And when I'm all in, I'm 125% all in. So the first thing we did was we tried to find a local hatchery, and we do have one here close to us who had the breeds that we wanted. And I do have some friends that I work with. I'm a nurse, so I work part-time at a local children's hospital, and I also work at a school. So I had some girlfriends that I worked with at the hospital who actually had some chickens. So they told me the hatchery that they got, the breeds that they got. They hadn't had really problems with them, but they didn't really know a whole lot about like what to do when they got sick, or like how to start them as chicks and what they really needed to do, other than they knew that they needed heat and that they knew that they needed to be in a brooder for a certain amount of time. But what do they do if they get sick? And what do they do, like if something gets wrong with them, what do they do? So then it kind of launched me on my journey to figure out and learn. I wanted to learn as much as I could possibly learn before I got these chicks. And I have 4 lovely children, and my youngest children last year were 11 and 9. So they were all in. And the last thing that a mom wants to do is to disappoint her kids. And the last thing I wanted to do was to get a chick and then have it die on me. Because then the kids would get all upset. So I said, okay, let's just start learning. I'm in a van a lot driving. So I listen to a lot of podcasts. So I just put in the podcast finder chickens, right? I would just like start searching podcasts for chickens. So the first one I came across was a podcast called Bach Talk. And that is by Dalia Monteroso. And she was really my first listen and learning podcast that I listened to, and I was just hooked. We listened to every Bach Talk possible podcast. Going to school, coming from school, my kids were all in. You know, we were talking about Dahlia at the dinner table. You know, Dahlia was a household name. My husband was like, "Who is Dahlia?" And I'm like, and then my son is the youngest one, and he was 9 last year. So then he started telling my husband all about Dahlia. So then I found her YouTube channel. And then from there, she has a backyard Chickenlandia Backyard Chickens 101 class. That is an online class, and it's a self-paced class, but you can ask lots of questions in there, and that's a direct way to Dahlia. So I was like, well, that's kind of a no-brainer, right? Like, yeah. before you do something, you should learn. And to backtrack a little bit, I had our first dog. We got our first dog, which was a Rhodesian Ridgeback, and I don't know if you know anything about them, but they're pretty intelligent dogs. So we had her back when my oldest two were 5 and 3. She lived to be about 11 and a half, 12. But I did agility with her. I did obedience classes with her, and she was 78 pounds. So she was a big dog. But I didn't have any other animals in, right? Just had Kangas, which was my Ridgeback's name. But I was all into that. I was all into doing as much obedience classes with her as possible, doing agility classes with her. I went to a local dog training club, joined the local dog training club. So she was pretty well behaved, and listened well to commands. And she was basically like my dog. And then we ended up getting Zeke, which is our current dog. And he is a hound mix. We got him at 11 weeks old. He is Heinz 57 of hounds. We did the DNA test, and he has a lot of different hound in him. But we got him in 2021. So that was in the height of COVID. So we basically had to pick him out of a parking lot. And I couldn't really do much with him. They didn't know much about him other than he was a litter of 6, and I was glad he was with his litter mates. So when puppies are puppies, their litter mates really teach them a lot in their first 8 weeks of life. And so I was happy he was with his litter mates. So then, but I still didn't know what his temperament was. And I was like, I have 4 kids. I don't want a nasty dog. And I knew nothing about his parents because he was a rescue. And so I ended up finding it was called an aptitude test that I was able to do. And within that aptitude test, there was multiple, it's called Von Commer's aptitude test. And I think it's either from Germany or Switzerland, but you can find it online. And there's lots of different boxes to check. And then at the end, it rates what the temperament is. Wow. And there's lots of different tests that you can do on puppies. One was the umbrella test, right? Like you let your puppy be sniffing around, all of a sudden you pop an umbrella out. And is that umbrella scaring the puppy? Does it make the puppy go back and then like just start barking crazy at the umbrella? Or does your puppy like get startled at first by the umbrella, but then is inquisitive and wants to come up and sniff the umbrella? That's the dog you want. You want the dog that is like at first initially shocked by the umbrella, but then it was like, what's with this umbrella? I don't think it's going to bite me. I don't think I need to bark at it, but I think I'm a little inquisitive. So Zeke did really, really well on all of the assessment tests other than pinching his feet. So when you have to trim a dog's nails, you obviously have to hold their feet. He failed. There's your rooster.
Yep.
To trim a dog's nails, you have to be able to pinch their feet. So that was the part he failed miserably at, and that has really been a work in progress. We've had to overcome him on that. But other than that, he did really, really well on all the other generalized temperament tests within that test. So I felt good about getting him as a puppy. So move forward to 2023 when we got the chicks. So after I learned about Dahlia's Backyard Chickens 101 class, through that I learned, after I had actually gotten the chicks, then I learned about Chicken Health Academy with Heather Levin. Dahlia had Heather on for an interview. So then I ended up joining the Chicken Health Academy class. Learning as much as I could learn before I got the chicks was so important. And
that is important. So many people start and then they run into so many problems and they have no idea what to do. So yeah, it is really important. And it's great to hear that because, I mean, a lot of people just, somebody shows up with chicks at their door and they don't have anything and they're not ready. So now that's fantastic.
Right. So then it got me to the point to where, how was I going to do a brooder that Zeke could see, because Zeke is our dog, that Zeke could see the chicks and know that they're part of the family, but then he couldn't get to the chicks. And I didn't want the chicks to be in the garage because we had park our garage and we park our cars in the garage. So then we were cleaning out the rest of our school stuff. And I went down to where we were storing a bunch of supplies at school. And I ran into these COVID death shields, which is the first picture on the screen. And I said, oh my goodness, the COVID death shields. I'm like, could I? And then I was like, oh, I don't know. Then the next thing that I learned about was Carolina Coops. So Carolina Coops is a company in North Carolina, outside of Raleigh. I think it's north of Raleigh. And they build custom coops. And their coops are gorgeous. They are literally, as Diane said in your last episode, they're the Cadillac of they are super nice. And my daughter's going to let Zeke outside here, so he might come to the camera. Anyway, so we ended up, I watched lots of YouTube channels that they had about building a coop, because we wanted to build our own coop. But the first thing I had to do was figure out what I was going to do for a brooder. So one episode, Matt Dubois, who is the owner of Carolina Coops, brought out polycarbonate and kind of put some wood around it. And he has a dog named Gus, who's a big dog. And Gus was looking at the chicks inside, and Matt was just talking about like how this is a great brooder, blah, blah, blah. And then it brought me back. Aha, the COVID death shields. I'm like, how can I make this work? And my dad is a builder. And so I was like, could I take some 2x4s? Could I cut like a track down the middle? And then could I slide the plexiglass shields through them? So I brought one home. I took a piece of board over to my dad's and I said, okay, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? And he's like, oh, no problem. We'll just take it up to the table saw. We'll rip a thing. No problem. That's how it started. So then we brought all these COVID shields back. And in this picture you're showing now, this is Riley, who was 11 at the time. And
this is my picture.
And Zeke, who is, or Lukey, who was 9 at the time. We brought all these COVID shields back from school. And this is 1/4-inch plexiglass. So it's super, super thick. And it was in different pieces, as you can see, because our COVID death shields ended up being tri pieces. So I had to figure out how many pieces I needed in order to so I needed to figure out how many pieces I needed in order to get it to fit right. And so I had my dad end up figuring out we kind of draw it out a dimension. And then I knew the bottom piece I wanted to be a piece of plywood because that was the easiest thing. At first I was thinking about cutting the plywood down, but I was like, oh, I don't know if that's going to work because then I don't want shavings to come out of the bottom. So I'm like, I'm just going to do a solid sheet of plywood, 8x4 solid sheet of plywood on the bottom. And then I'm going to rip the sides down. So here's a picture of Luke. We got all this lumber in my lovely van. And then we ended up going home and kind of drawing it all out. So then the next picture probably is going to show, this is what we ended up doing. And I did brood the girls inside the house. I know a lot of people are like saying, oh, that was crazy. And yeah, it kind of was, but we ended up cleaning it up afterwards. So in this picture here, you can kind of see, I have the plexiglass in some of them. And so they are in 3 different sections. So when you bring the chicks home, they are super tiny. They are super duper tiny, but they grow so fast. And that's one thing I learned from doing all of the research in the beginning is how fast they grow. Well, I was still shocked by how fast they grew. It was just crazy. So you can go ahead and flip to the next picture. Yeah, so you can see the plexiglass. I end up doing tracks, and so I did 3 sections. Each section was like 2.5 feet by 4 feet. So initially in the beginning, I knew I just wanted to have 1 section for when they came home. And then as they grew, like every 2 weeks, I'd open up another partition. So then eventually at, 5.5 to 6 weeks old, they'd be able to run through the whole thing. That's one thing chickens need is they need space. And if they don't have space and if they get bored, they start picking on each other. That's a number one thing that people have problems with. And they're mean, they're
yeah, very mean.
They are the first real mean girls. They're just like middle school girls in cliques. That's what they are. They're really mean to each other. So go ahead and then I needed to get a top. So there's Riley laying down there. And so the top was 2x2s. The sides were 2x4s. Then I ended up putting hardware cloth on top as my roof. Or is my top on it. So, cause they start flying about 2.5 weeks. And they will start to fly out. So we were very gentle in, how we ended up getting in there. So then you can see I ended up getting an outdoor rug as well to put underneath that because I knew I'd have some shavings and stuff coming out of it. And so at this point in time, Zeke the dog was like, what are you doing? Right. Why is this coming into the house? So he's very inquisitive. He was very inquisitive about the brooder. And so whenever he came around, I would give him some treats and he would sniff it. He was like, what is this whole thing going on? So then May, this is before this. Okay. So before you bring your chicks home, this is super important. You have to have everything ready. Your heat source. So I ended up doing a heat plate. A heat plate is less of a fire risk than a heat lamp. Now, they are more pricey, but I like to be able to sleep comfortably at night. And I knew that the heat plate would let me sleep comfortably. You need to turn it on at least 2 hours so it heats up fully before you bring the chicks home. And it's really best to have it at an angle. And some people were questioning this. I know in our Chicken Health Academy Facebook group, some people were saying, well, how does this really work? Well, it really is mimicking the mama hen. So if the mama hen's sitting, she doesn't sit like this, she sits like this, right? So her back end is going to be sitting lower than her front end. So that's how I ended up doing the heat plate. And you kind of want like one section to be where mama hen is, right? And one section to be where the food is. At least this is what I had learned, right? This was my first time ever having chicks. So learned that the food side needs to be on one side and that mama hen needs to be on the other side. And then the feed and the water needs to be a little bit warmer. in the beginning, you can't give them just cool tap water because everything needs to stay warm with them. And the water is really important to put rocks or marbles in, because these little chicks in the beginning, and I left my marbles and rocks in for the first, I think it was day 13. I took my marbles and rocks out. They need to be able to not drown. And yes, they do drown. And that was the one thing I learned from Dahlia. Is that marbles and rocks are really important in there, so they don't drown. They don't have a lot of strength to be able to pull themselves up, and if they get wet, that just weighs them down even more, and then they kind of freak out. And then the other thing I did before I brought them home is I hard boiled some eggs. Now, everybody thought I was crazy for doing this, and I was like, nope, Dahlia said to do this, so I'm going to do this. So the nutrition that they get, the first thing that it hits their gut is very important. And so the yolk of the hard-boiled egg is the last thing they absorb in the egg. So when they come home, whatever you can get in them in the beginning is very nutritionally based and is going to give them the best start. So I did hard-boiled eggs, and the first couple of days I gave them some yolk of the hard-boiled eggs just crumbled up on the base of the brooder. I also use paper towels. So paper towels, or you can use an older towel that's really thin. But what Dahlia recommends is, and actually I listen to Lisa Steele too. She's another OG of Chicken World. I listen to she doesn't have a podcast, and she has a blog. So I read a lot of her blogs, and then I ended up Googling all of Lisa Steele's interviews that she ever did on YouTube. And there's lots of them out there. So I listen to those over and over, because between Lisa Steele, Dahlia, and our wonderful Heather Levin, and Carolina Coops, with everything they know about chickens, I really felt I had a great start. Also, Gail Domerow, who has written many books. Chicken Health Handbook is one of her books that I have. She's great with teaching you everything to know about the health of chickens as well. So going back to the yolk. So I gave them the yolk, the paper towels in the beginning, really for the first 2 to 3 days. And the purpose of giving them something to grip onto is so that their feet spread out evenly. And then once those feet spread out evenly and they've developed a little bit, then you can pull those up. So it's called spade leg, and I wrote it down here, spraddle leg.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, again, this is my first time. So I'm just learning all this stuff, and I'm like, okay, they say to do paper towels in the beginning. You can do paper, and some people do puppy pads, but I just wanted to do paper towels. Paper towels were easy because of how they're divided in those little half sections. Then I was able so I did like 3 layers of paper towels. This is before the day before we went to hatchery and got them, right? We had the whole the whole first section laid out in paper towels. I did like 3 layers. So as they pooped, I mean, I wasn't right there after every time that they pooped, but it was, we did it like once a day, maybe twice a day. I ended up just tearing off that paper towel, rolling it up, and then there was another one underneath. So I didn't have to take the whole thing back up. And with the puppy pads, you do have to kind of take the whole thing up. You can't rip it off.
Yeah.
So that's why I ended up doing the paper towels. So then we ended up, I had the food, the water out, turned the heat plate on, and some chick grit. So I had all that ready to go before we went to the hatchery. So then the next picture, I think, shows the kids. So there we went. We went to the hatchery. We got the girls. We ordered 8 girls. We ordered girls that would give us different colored eggs. That was one thing when we were researching it. My husband and I and the kids were excited to get different colored eggs. So we ended up getting 2 golden comets, and the golden comets are the prolific layers. They lay all the time. And so they lay a dark brown egg. We got 2 buff Orpingtons because those are the classic girls, right? Everybody has to have a buff in their flock. Two of those. We got 2 Americanas, or they're not the true Americanas. They're knockoff. Anyway, they get the blue eggs. We got one barred rock, 1 splash lace red wine and dot, and so we ordered 8. But when we got to the hatchery, they gave us 9 because we got a bonus chick. So then you can see, as you can go ahead and go to the next slide. And we came home, and there is Zeke. That's the dog before we came home. So he knew that morning something was happening because we were giving so much attention to the brooder, and we were putting everything in there. I did it the night before, actually. And so he was like, what's going on? So, but he's not trying to tear anything up. He's just sitting there looking at it. So you can go ahead and go on the next picture. That was just another, that picture,
Okay.
go back. So the one thing where this is facing at is facing the west side of our house where the sun sets. So this was kind of a last thing after we got it designed, and I got it almost built all the way. I was like, how can I move this thing? How can I roll this thing? Like, I don't want the sun. The girls are going to like the sun. So I ended up getting 2x4s and putting some casters on the bottom. So as you can see, I have, so those were just screwed in from the floor down just so I could roll it. I could roll it around. So you can go ahead and go to the next picture. And so here we came home with the girls. We ended up taking one, and that was the great thing about the design of the brooder was I could pull out one section of plexiglass, and then we could put our hand right in versus having to go over top of the brooder and having to lean in that way. So the kids could go right up to them. And there was another picture I think I sent you. I don't know if it made it on the slide or not, but
Okay.
where the kids were playing. Oh, it's okay. You can go back.
I don't. That was the last slide for that set, and then this is the next group. So
okay. So this is one of the. I'm pretty sure this is one of the buffs, or it could be a golden. They look pretty similar. The golden comets have a darker stripe down through the back of them because they're sex linked. So sex linked mean that you can determine what their sex is at hatch. But you can see here's my paper towels. There's the heat plate. You can see some yellow is some of the yolk. There's chick grit everywhere. And as soon as you bring them home, you dip their little beaks in the water. You show them where the heat is, and they pretty much know what to do. It's kind of amazing, actually. Instinctually, they're pretty smart. And at this point in time, the picture back where Zeke was right next to Riley, he kind of was whining a little bit, but as he was being a good dog, we were treating him. So it is a positive reinforcement that works really well with dogs. Now I did have a bark collar on him in case he did bark big. I didn't want it to scare the girls, but I didn't even have to use it. He really was good. And like I said, though, I did training with him in the beginning. I did agility with him too. I did obedience classes with him too as a puppy. I cannot reinforce those first 4 months of life as a puppy are so important. You don't really get those back all the way. So you can go ahead and go to the next picture. And this is the end of the first day.
Wow.
He was so enthralled with the interest of the girls. And, we were going over there, constantly looking at them and taking the plexiglass out. And then finally I said to my kids, I'm like, we need to let them rest. Like, they've had a big day. We need to let them rest. So we were in the other room, probably eating dinner. And then I just happened to walk in there, and there was Zeke. And I was like, oh, this is going to be fine. He's going to like the girls. This is going to be fine. So then you can go ahead and go to the next one. And then this must have been maybe like a day or two later, but you can see every time, right? And the plexiglass shields are up. So anytime the kids came to the side, the chicks just automatically went to the kids. It was really, really sweet. And then you can see that I have the rocks in the waterer, and the paper towels are out, and all that kind of stuff. So go ahead and go to the next slide. And then this was after the paper towels were removed. So this is probably like day 3, maybe. I think maybe day 3. So we removed the paper towels, and then I used healthy straw. This is one thing I learned from Carolina Coops. Oh, and this is a Carolina Coop shirt. This is a Don't Peck on Me shirt. And I actually won this from one of their Video Chicken Live. They do Video Chicken Live on Fridays. They're taking a summer hiatus right now. But the Video Chicken Lives, I gave a good idea. And so Matt rang the golden bell, and I got a free shirt.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they were selling healthy straw. And healthy straw is straw that is cut down the middle of the husk of the straw. So it absorbs really well. And they recommended it instead of like the shavings. And it's kind of, they just said it absorbed more. So I said, well, I'll try it out. We'll see. So it worked really, really well. And you can also find it at other places too, but it's the coarse. There's 2 different types of healthy straw. It's from Canada. And there's a coarse one and a fine one. And the fine one Tractor Supply has, but it's a little too fine. The coarse really works out better.
Do you just use that in your brooder, or do you use that in your coops too?
I actually I'm using it in the floor of the run of the coop.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it actually has worked out really well. It absorbs a ton and it dries out very fast. I'm kind of amazed because where I have my coop at, I'll kind of turn this way so we can kind of see. So the coop is down there behind the shed, and that's my big coop. There's your guy again. Yeah. So the rain, how it naturally falls is it does get really hard rains, and it will flood the floor of the coop. The coop is elevated some, but it still does obviously gets wet. So you can go ahead and go on the next slide. So this was probably week 3 for them, I want to say. And we needed some purchase. So I just went outside, found some nice, probably about an inch diameter pieces of sticks, put them up there, kind of wedged them in between. I had already had one of my friends from school gave me some small perches to use. They really didn't like them as much as they just like the sticks. So,
I like that. That's really a great idea. That is a really good idea.
Yeah. And like I said before, they really need space. They really need entertainment. So the design really worked out well for this next stage, because then they were able to get up on some perches. I was able to put some a dust bath in there in the one corner. I don't think I can see in this picture.
Yeah, no.
The one thing they really like too is I ended up getting a baby mirror for like the car. And you can kind of see it in this picture. It's on the left side, kind of back. I had 2 chicks. One is my barred rock, her name is Oreo. She's kind of a pain right now, but they loved to see their reflection in that mirror. And they would walk up and they would like look, and then they would peck at it, right? Because they think it's another chick, right? It was hysterical to watch them. So I left the mirror in there the whole entire time. They really liked it. And the other thing is, I tried to move things in different spots in the brooder because I had room. They didn't like it. Chickens, they're habitual. So every time I moved the divider, I kept the water, the heat plate in the same area. And it's getting a little windy here, so I'm gonna hopefully. Can you still hear me? Okay.
Oh yeah, you're good.
Okay, good. So I kept everything kind of in the heat plate always stayed in the same area. The food and the water stayed in the same area. I just gave them more of a play yard, basically. And they are to this day, chickens are so habitual. I'm shocked by how habitual they are.
Yeah.
So then at the next picture, it shows us taking them outside. So we ended up taking them outside at 2 weeks, 2 weeks old. And really, I probably could have taken them out earlier, but we kind of had a wet spring of the 23, and it kind of was not as warm as what it needed to be for them at that age. So I ended up on some really sunny days. The first, and I have a cat carrier. In this picture, you can see the cat carrier up there. And so I ended up putting them all in a cat carrier from the brooder. That was a little hard to catch everybody, but we got it done. And then they loved being outside. They loved the sun. We put 2 dust baths in there with the kids. I think is the next picture, or this just, yep. So here's the next picture with the kids. Put a dust bath in there. And of course, the last picture you had was Zeke. Zeke was he was happy to be out with the girls. One thing I did do with him is once I had the girls outside, the first time he was super interested in them through the gate. So I let him sniff all the way around. Then 2 of the girls that were the calmer of the bunch, I pulled them out by myself with my own hands, right? And just I held them in my hands and let Zeke sniff them. And then as soon as he was done sniffing them and he walked away, then I brought another one out. He sniffed that one. And then about 5 minutes later, I pulled the initial one out that I did in the first time. And then I just let her be on the grass right in front of him. And he kind of sniffed a little bit more, but then was fine. But then, of course, she started chirping because she missed her flock mates.
Yes.
And I ended up putting her back. So just that slow desensitization to that animal or to that chick, to Zeke, really helped him feel good about being, with the girls. So then you can kind of go ahead and move up. And so that's just the kids in there. And then this picture shows all 3 sections of the brooder open. And you can kind of see in the middle, I think that was Reba. That was my Wine and Dot is in the middle. And I think that might have been another Golden Comet there in the middle. Those middle perches, I ended up getting a closet mate anchor to a closet, and it was about 1.5 inches in diameter. We have bamboo in the back part of our property. That there was some older bamboo out there, and it was perfect the size of a perch board, and it fit perfectly in these little things. So I ended up screwing that into the middle supports of the brooder, and it worked out perfectly. So I had, like, at nighttime, only a couple would actually perch up there, but only for a little while. But most of them all still came over to the heat plate. And at 5 weeks old, I unplugged the heat plate. And when they were inside, they had enough feathers on them. But it was funny because at nighttime, though, that was their bed. They all still came over to the heat plate. So I ended up, I had to adjust it as they grew, and then added a bigger feeder in there. And of course, then all the feeders got elevated. So they make a lot of a mess. So even at the beginning, I ended up elevating some of the feeders with just different things to make them as stable as possible. So they stayed out of that. Okay, go ahead and go to the next one. Okay, and then we were ready to go outside. This is Luke with, I'm pretty sure this is Mother Clucker. Yeah, I had a chicken named Mother Clucker. That was my son, Will. He named one Mother Clucker. Said he was my college student. I said, everybody can pick a name of a chicken, but it has to be PG. It has to be a PG name. And so Will came up with that. So that was one of our buffs. And then here's like the last picture. Here's all the girls and the omelet cube, which I love the omelet cube. Ended up being, we kept them in there until we had the big coop finished. And so that shows a picture of all of them. Yeah, that's another picture, just the inside. And we got a cover for the top of it. They loved it. I love moving it around. It's been a great thing. And then we finished the big coop December, very beginning of December. And so then everybody moved in there. Unfortunately, I started with 9. One ended up being a rooster. He was crowing at 5 weeks old, very loud. And we're not allowed to have roosters where we live. So he found a new home. And I've had my challenges with health. We did not get them vaccinated for Merrick's. My husband was against that. I will tell you, the next chicks I get will be vaccinated for Merrick's. We lost one in August to Merrick's. So now and that was something that I learned a lot about as well. So then Christmas morning, I lost another girl. That was my Reba. She was my splash lace red wine and dot. She died very fast. She just started having problems breathing up on a roost. I knew her combs and her wattles were a different color. It was literally right after we opened up presents on Christmas morning. And she died right in my arms. Ended up being internal laying. That was her problem. She never laid an egg. I never got an egg from her. And everybody at that point in time, the Golden Comet started laying at 17 weeks. Everybody else was about like 22, 23 weeks is when they started laying. But never got an egg from Reba. And I was always suspicious. I was like, why is she not laying eggs? And then when I moved everybody into the new coop, we ended up having some problems with bullying. And it probably started in the omelet when they were in that, because they were getting too small. The space was getting too small for them. So when I moved everybody into the big coop, you can go ahead and go show the next picture of the big coop. So lots of room in there, lots of room in there. I had some girls that were getting pecked on. And so I found the bully, isolated the bully. But stress is a really big problem with chickens. So I ended up finding another one. So ended up being that I lost another girl in April, which the vet still seems to think it was stress induced, but it was also internal laying. So, but they tend to do more internal laying when they're stressed, is from what I have learned about. So we started with 9 in May, and here we are in July, a year later, and I'm down to 5. So we did have 3, and the one with Merrick's, I knew right away when I saw her in the beginning of August in the omelet, when I went out there to go take care of them that morning, she was walking funny. Her gait was abnormal when she was walking. And right away, Dahlia spoke to me in my head and said, "Oh, that's Merrick's." And I knew right away. I pulled her right from the flock. Then I ended up giving the rest of the girls Chinese skull cap, oil of oregano, really boosted their immunity as much as possible. And luckily, nobody else has gotten sick. Now, I mean, they all have it, right? Just they have built immunity to it.
Right.
So anyway.
Wow. Yeah, now, do you free range, or do they stay?
They pretty much stay inside the coop. At nighttime, if we're outside and if Zeke is outside, then, and if we can all keep eyes on them, then I do let them out. Oh, maybe like a half hour at a time. Not anything, not a long time. We do have bald eagles here. I have lots of hawks. And eventually, the space you see behind the coop in this picture, I am going to eventually get that fenced in, and I do have an outside omelet door to put on the back side of the coop to be able to let them free range out there. And that's about 100 feet by 200 feet. So for the amount of chickens I have, that's
yeah, you have plenty. Yeah, I can't free range here. The hawks are really bad, and and they do come down. I had my babies like in a playpen, and I walked in for 1 minute and I come out and there's a hawk sitting right on top of the playpen. And I mean, it was reinforced. So but it's enough to scare you. And that's, I don't free range at all because of the predators. Yeah. So your coop is really, really nice.
Yeah. So we ended up designing it. Like I said, we listened to a lot of Carolina Coops videos, and then the plexiglass that I had at school, I used that as the windows.
Oh, nice.
The double door there on the side, we purchased that double door from Carolina Coops. The egg hutch we purchased from Carolina Coops. I have rope wrap roost bars on the inside we purchased from them. So I'm a huge fan, but I really wanted to build my own coop.
Yeah.
And I really felt that I could. The Dutch door I built myself. I did have a handyman and another guy come and help me build it. My husband helped as well. My husband's actually the one that designed it.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask where you got your design. Oh, okay.
Yeah, we researched lots of coops, and which was going to be the easiest way for us to build it, not being terribly skilled ourselves. So this was the design that we came up with. And then I had a really nice guy on Etsy do a SketchUp. He drew it up in SketchUp for us. So, and like underneath the double doors there on the end, I have access doors. So like underneath the hen house, this is one thing that Carolina Coops doesn't do, but we did see it on some other homemade coops, is if they're under the hen house, and if you know about chickens, like they're not going to show that they're sick until they're really, really sick. So I did do a couple escape doors underneath on the corners there, so then I can get to somebody if they're in a corner area down there. So.
No, you did a great job. I wouldn't believe you weren't a professional. That really looks nice. You did a great job.
Well, my husband spent a lot of time looking at different plans and figuring out what we could build that would be like standard size lumber, standard size roof panels. Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time and speaking with me. Now, if anybody had questions or anything, especially with how you set up your brooder or working with your dog, is there a way on social media that they could reach you? Would you be willing to answer any questions if anybody had any?
Sure. Yeah, you can find me on Facebook. I'm open. Joy Detzel -Copfer. You can just send me a Facebook Messenger message if you have any questions. I'm happy to help. I love mentoring new chicken mamas. I'm still new myself. I mean, compared to a lot of other people, but I have learned a lot in the last year.
Well, it sounds like it. You've done a ton of research, and I say that's unbelievable and incredible, and it just shows your dedication to the chickens, and and doing it the right way, which it's always better to do it the right way than how many times redoing it over and over the wrong way. But well, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me, and I look forward to talking to you again sometime soon.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Tammy. Thank you.